This tutorial is called Creating and Editing Shapes. We're going to do this in Illustrator. It does start on page 84 in Classroom in a Book. So for this tutorial, we're just going to create a new document. So in Illustrator, we can click on Create New, or we can go up to File, New. Either one of those ways works to create a new document. So for the title, we're going to name it Home Sale. Now, because everybody's going to be working on this, make sure that you put your name in front of it. So mine will be Amber Kozar, Home Sale. Make sure that your units are in inches. There's lots of different things that we can choose here, but we want to work in inches. And our width is going to be 8 inches, and our height is going to be 8 inches. In Illustrator, we are using artboards rather than canvases. And in Illustrator, we can have more than one artboard. So they want us to have 2 for this tutorial. If I click down here on More Settings, you don't really need to, but I just want to show you this option. It will tell you, if you have more than one artboard, it'll give you options for how to lay out those artboards. It will also give you options for how to space them out evenly, just so it looks organized and clean on the page, but we don't need to do anything with that right now. So I'm going to hit cancel. We're not going to worry about the bleed. We'll talk about that later. And all of this other stuff can stay where it's at, but you can see just like in Photoshop, it asks us about color modes. It does ask us about resolution, even though we don't need to worry about resolution. That would be effects that are rasterized, because there are some effects in Photoshop that are raster effects, but we don't use those very often. So we're just going to keep all of those settings. We're going to go ahead and hit create. And when this opens up, you're going to see that there are 2 artboards. Again, you can navigate between those artboards. If I were to zoom in on just one of those artboards, I'll just keep one artboard in my space. I can move to different artboards by clicking on these navigation buttons down here in the corners, or if I have my navigator panel up, I can go from one artboard to another. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to make sure that we save it. So I'm going to go to File. You're going to have to do, you could do a save or a save as, it doesn't really matter because it's a new document. So we're going to hit Save, and just go to your desktop, and you should see the folder that you copied. So there's the Adobe Illustrator Classroom in a Book folder, and we're on lesson 3, and then we can go ahead and hit Save and save it right to that folder. This window is always going to pop up. You don't have to mess with any of the settings there, just hit OK. So now it's saved, so as you're working on it, you may want to save it periodically. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to work with basic shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and close some of these things here. So there are rectangles. So if you look under your shapes here, we have rectangles, ellipses, polygons, we have the star tool, and we have a line segment tool. So we're going to probably play with most of these within this tutorial. So the first thing that you're going to do is choose the rectangle tool. We're going to draw with this. There's a number of ways that we can do this. We can click and drag, and if our smart guides are on, you're going to see that little gray box show our width and our height. And so we're trying to get that approximately 4.7 inches wide. Doesn't have to be exact. And we're trying to get it about 2.3 inches tall. Again, it does not need to be exact, but I will show you how you can do this exactly. So I've got that. If I don't want that, or I mess it up, I can just hit delete. The other way that I can make it exactly is I can just click on the artboard once, and then I can enter in my dimensions. So it's 4.7 for my width, and 2.3 for my height. If it's not exactly in the center of the page, you can take your selection tool and you can move it anywhere on the artboard. We kind of want it right in the middle. I can also, if I go to Window, Transform, if I drew out a square that wasn't the right size, I can also go into my Transform panel and I can add my dimensions here as well. So lots of different ways that you can make shapes different sizes. I can also go up to the Control panel here as well and enter those dimensions in there as well if I need to make it exact. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make this rectangle brown. So we have two different kinds of colors in Illustrator. We have what's called the fill color, which is the color on the inside of the square, and then we have the stroke color, which is the outline of the shape. So if I were to click on this shape, you can see right here that my fill is white and my stroke or my outline is black. So I'm going to change the color of this to a brown color. I don't think there's well, yeah, there is a specific brown here that they want us to use. So if I want to change the inside color or the fill, I can double click on that fill, and then I can either use my color picker, or there's places where I can enter numbers in. So we're going to look at those CMYK values. If you remember, that's the color mode for printing. So C stands for cyan, M stands for magenta, Y stands for yellow, and the K stands for the key color, which is black. So right now it's all 0 because white means lack of color, so then we have zeros in all of those areas. So for the cyan, we want 50% cyan, we want 70% magenta, we want 80% yellow, and we want 70% black. And that should give us kind of a brown color right here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit on OK, and that will fill that with that color. I believe for this one we can keep that black stroke on there, so we won't mess with that right now. Now what we're going to do, because we're going to be building a house, so if you didn't see the after file, I should have showed you that first. This is what we're going to be creating, but we're going to build all of it. We're drawing all of it. So we've got the house, and now we're going to put a door in here. So the door is going to be a rectangle, and that door, if I click once, is going to be 1 inch wide by 1.6 inches wide. And that door is going to be a red color. So again, if we double click on the fill, we want cyan to be 15, we want magenta to be 100, we want yellow to be 90, and we want black to be 10, or a red color. We're just looking for a red color. And I can use my selection tool to move this down here in the corner. I don't think there's a specific amount of space that needs to have. We're going to put a window over here, so just make sure you have enough room for that. The next thing that we're going to do is put that window in there. And that window is, we want to start at the top of this door. We want them to align. So see this little pink line? These are my smart guides. So this lets me know when I'm aligned to the top of that shape. So I don't want to go right off the corner, but I want to kind of move over here to the side. I'm going to click and drag. And we want that to be about 3/4 of an inch tall, which is about 0.75. And then we're just going to make this a little bit wider. I don't think there's a specific size for that. So we do want it about 0.75. That's good enough. That's close enough. And this is going to be white. So we're going to, we can either click and drag up here to make it white, or we can add in all zeros into the CMYK sections, Or we can even hit this little button right here. This is our default button. So this will by default make it a white fill and a black stroke. The next thing that we are going to do is create a little window over the door. So we're going to have to build this object. It's going to be like a half window over the door. So we're going to take our ellipse tool. So with our ellipse tool, when we draw, if we don't hold the shift button, you can see we can make ovals. But if I hold the shift button down, it turns it into a perfect circle. So again, if you hold the shift button, it'll turn it into a perfect circle. If you're not holding shift, we can make ovals. Okay. So what we're trying to do, and just like in Photoshop, if I'm starting to draw this and it's not in the right place, I can hold my space bar so that I can move it. So I'm trying to get an oval that is the same width as the door. So I just put it over here on the left edge of the door, and I'm dragging it over to the right. We want it the same width. And we are going to make that a gray color. So there's another way that you can change colors of things. You can come up here into your control panel, and there will be some swatches in here that you can choose from. And there should be some grays in here. So I'm just going to pick a middle gray. If you don't have that, you can just double click on here and just pick a middle gray in here, or as you can see, my black is at 50%. So just kind of get a gray color in there. We're going to hold off on that because we are going to do some more to this later, but we'll come back to that. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to create a windowsill for the front of the window. So we're actually going to use the rectangle tool for that. And we are going to just click and draw a windowsill in front of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a rounded rectangle. So once you draw it, up here in your option panel, you'll see corner type. And so I can choose the different types of corners. I want a round corner on this. So I'm going to click on that round corner. So then hopefully when we zoom in on this, nope, they have changed this in the 2020 version. So trying to figure out. Wonder if I have to choose that first. Well, we're not going to worry about that. We'll just make it a rectangle. That's fine. We'll have to figure out how to do rounded rectangles later on. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is make the chimney. So we're going to take our rectangle tool and we are going to make a rectangle up here at the top. Just make it about this size. And we're going to make that white for right now. So again, we can just hit that default button. And then we're going to put a little lip up here at the top. Let me click off of this. We're going to click and drag a little window or a little top of the chimney. And we're going to make that gray. Now we want it to be the same gray as this, so I could go up here. We know that that's a 50% gray, so I could come up here and click on that. But I can also take my eyedropper tool and I can click on another shape and it will make it that color as well. The next thing we're going to do is make the roof. So you'll notice that there are no triangle tools in here, but we do have a polygon tool. So I'm going to take that polygon tool, and as I click and drag, you can see there are several sides to this. But before I let go of my mouse, if I use my arrow keys, I can add more sides, or I can delete sides so that I have a triangle. And notice that I'm kind of tilting it a little bit. If I hold Shift, it will keep it in alignment. The bottom will be parallel to the edge of the artboard. So I'm going to make a triangle that is about that big, and I'm going to put that over here. It's going to go off the edge. And I'm going to take my direct selection tool because I want that to be a little bit squattier. So I'm going to grab that anchor point. I'm going to click on it once so that it's highlighted, and I'm going to pull down. Now, if I don't hold Shift, you can kind of see how I'm changing this. I'm going to hold Shift so that it comes down directly in the middle like this. So I want to make this a little squattier, just a little taller than the chimney, just like that. And I'm going to draw another triangle. I should already have it as a triangle. I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. Bring this over here, and again I want this to kind of go off the edge a little bit over here, and again I'm going to make this a little bit squattier because it's a really tall roof. So I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to pull that down a little bit. I can even make this a little bit wider because I want it to look like there's kind of like two peaks there, but I want this triangle to be in the front. So I could go to my layers and click on this little drop down menu, and I could move my layers around. So you can see that right now I have this layer, this polygon selected because it's got this little rectangle here. If I select something else, it shows me what I have selected in my layers panel. So I could click on this, and then I can click and drag this in my layers panel just like in Photoshop, or I can right click and do arrange, and I want that to come to the front or the top of the layers panel. So I'm going to do bring to front, and you can see that that just popped up to the top of my layers panel. I can also go to object arrange and do that here as well. Now we're going to come back to that window over the door. And what we're going to do is we're going to use some Pathfinder tools with this. So now I'm going to use the star tool, and I want to kind of show you how this works a little bit, and sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. So when I pull this out, it's just going to pull out a normal star. Before I let go of the mouse, I can add more points to it, or I can take away more points. This one, I believe, had, I'm not sure how many points they wanted on here. Looks like 10 maybe. So there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we can also change this by holding Option, or we can do Command. So you can see how that changes that. I'm going to undo that for a minute. And I want this to have 10 stars on it, and I want it to have kind of these spiky things that come out. As I'm drawing this, I want to rotate it so that the two on the edge, I'll do this here in just a second and show you, that these two on the edge are kind of horizontal because we're going to turn this into a little window. I want to make sure that these are centered, so I'm going to click on that star and click on my oval, and I'm holding Shift when I select each of those. So again, I grabbed my circle, I'm going to hold Shift and click on my star. So now both objects are selected, but now I need to make that oval the key object because I don't want the oval to move. So I'm just going to click on it one more time. I'm not holding Shift, and you can see this dark blue outline. So now when I come up here and I do my horizontal align center, if it wasn't perfectly in the center, now it is. So I can use those alignment tools really nicely. And I'm going to click off that. And there's a couple different ways to do this. I find this is the easiest way to do it. I'm going to click on my oval. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to, oh, I did forget one thing. I'm sorry. I'm going to move this for a second. Forgot one step. Sorry. I need to make this a half circle because it's a whole oval right now. So I am going to take my rectangle tool and I'm going to try to find where that intersection is, and I'm going to click and drag a rectangle, and it's going to go over the top of the circle. It does not matter how, as long as it's wider than the circle and longer than the bottom of the circle, we're good. Now I'm going to select the rectangle, hold shift and select the square. I'm going to go up to Window, Pathfinder. You will love the Pathfinder. This is going to help you modify shapes. So if I were to click on this button right here, it's going to unite those shapes and make them as one, but that's not what I want to do. I want to click on minus front. So whatever object is in the front is going to be subtracted from the object in the back. So when I do minus front, now I'm left with a half circle. I'm going to move this up a little bit. And we're already starting to see that we have kind of a window. All right, now I'm going to bring that star back over because I'm going to have a little star pattern in there. So I want to make sure that star is in the front. So I'm going to bring that to the front, and I'm going to hold shift and select my half circle, and I'm going to click one more time on my half circle to make it a key object. I'm going to align those shapes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on these two shapes again, and again I'm going to do minus front because I want that. Now that didn't work out real well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that because it looks like my star needs to be rotated a little bit because it did something funky there at the bottom. So I think I'm going to do something like that. I think that's going to look good. And I'm going to click both objects, make sure that star is the front object, and I'm going to do minus front. And now we have a little window. I could probably make that star. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to make a little bit better of a star. I'm going to make the center of that star, oops, a little bit. I'm just going to make that a little bit more narrow. I forgot you have to reset your star. You have to shut down Illustrator unless they've changed it in the 2020 version. So we'll just go ahead and use this. I might be able to make this a little bit smaller. I think that works. Because it was just taking up a lot of that space. I'm going to rotate it a little bit. And again, make sure that it's in the center. I think that might look a little bit better. Bring this down a little bit. Actually, I'm going to bring this down like this. Yeah, that's how I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do minus front. That looks a whole lot better. Now it looks like a window. Now I'm going to go back to my roof. I'm going to click on this first triangle, and I'm going to play with the strokes a little bit. So I want you to see what the strokes will do on this. So I'm going to go to Window, Stroke, and again the stroke is the outside color, and there's a lot of options that we can have for this. So if yours looks really small like this, just double click on the word stroke a couple of times until you see this panel. So we have the weight or the thickness of the stroke. We are going to change that to 10 points. So we're going to see that gets quite a bit thicker. And notice that the path or the edge of the shape, we have equal amounts of the stroke on both sides of that. I can change that by aligning my stroke differently. So right now it's aligned on the center. I can align on the inside, or I can align to the outside. We're going to align this to the inside of the stroke.